This episode of the only podcast about movies comes with an important statement right up top. After recording this week's episode, it came to our attention that one of the directors we speak about has been accused of serious sexual misconduct. We felt it was important to acknowledge that at the time of this recording, we were unaware of the allegations against director Gary Goddard. The topic of separating art from the artist and whether or not it should be is a big subject, and maybe something we'll discuss in depth on a later episode. We assure you that our naivete on this matter is a sign of mild ignorance and not willful blindness. With that in mind, enjoy the show. What is up, Internet? I wonder why they put the food on these little white sticks. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And it's pretty, but is it art? My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically our 150th episode special, our Desert Island Films.
150 episodes. You know, I did the math, and I think that means we've got 7.5 full 24-hour days of content that you could listen to.
That's not true.
That is absolutely true. Approximately 1.2 hours at 150 episodes is 7.4 days.
Should we start a radio station?
I mean, you could just literally just...
No, you can. There's internet things where you can just start internet radio stations that you just sort of put your stuff on. We could put it on a loop.
Wow. Imagine like dipping in imagine sleeping at our Mad Max Fury Road episode and then waking up at our Entourage episode or waking up at our Civil War episode or waking up at our Pigeon Saddle Blanche contemplating existence. You would just be like, it would just...
What year is it?
Yeah, I know. And then listening to us evolve as like radio voices over time as well, and I think would be really fascinating. Anyway, Matt, 150 episodes. Wow. We did it, buddy.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. It's not quite the same milestone as 100.
No, well, we did something special for 100. Go back and listen to that if you want.
It's 100 plus 0.5.
But you had this really fun idea.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, what do desserts have to do with films?
I do that. I spell dessert with a D-E-S-S all the time.
Spelling is not a strength of mine whatsoever, but you had this idea of, and I'll let you sort of pitch it, but the concept of a desert island film, what our desert island film would be, and then we'd both watch them and sort of talk about the other ones, or how do you want to do this?
So the scenario is this. Imagine, Mr. Kroll, you and I are on a plane, say to the Southern Hemisphere, say we were flying to my homeland.
Okay, we're going to New Zealand.
But for some reason, at the gate,
sure,
you were upgraded to first class.
I mean, for some reason, of course.
So you're sitting in the front of the plane, sipping champagne with those like extra big screens that they give the special people, and I'm like crammed up in the back seat. Wait,
why don't you get first class?
No, I'm just like crammed up in cattle class, all the way in the back, like my feet, like jammed up against the seat in front of me.
Okay.
Trying to like hold a laptop or an iPad or something while like eating that shitty food that they give you. And say at that moment, the plane cracks in two.
Okay.
Right?
We're on separate desert islands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the plane cracks in two. For some reason, there's nobody else on this plane. It's just me in cattle class, you in first class. That's the way we roll. Okay.
No flight attendants.
No flight attendants.
No pilots.
Look, it's an unfortunate tragedy, but everyone died.
Oh, God, did everyone die?
Everyone died. Everyone died except for you and me.
This exercise got dark.
The front of the plane goes to one side of the island.
Sure.
The back of the plane goes to the other side of the island.
We're in a typical lost scenario.
Yep. You're with the others. I'm like on the beach.
Okay.
And
hello, Jack.
We have to struggle for survival. But the one respite we have.
Okay.
Is that for some reason in the other's cabin there is a DVD player. But only one piece of luggage survived.
Not a Blu-ray player?
With the movie you chose, I'm going to go with the DVD.
Oh.
Actually, with both our movies could be DVDs. They're both on Blu-ray, but unnecessarily so.
What are you talking about? They were both crystal clear. You made a comment.
And the piece of luggage that has landed on your side of the island is my luggage with the one film that I always carry with me whenever I travel for some reason.
Like a security blanket.
Yeah, just like a security blanket. I keep it with me wherever I go at all times. And on my side of the island, I found the hatch, by the way. So I found the hatch, which has that like underground bunker, and there's a DVD player in there. And I've got your piece of luggage. It's like the old switcheroo. And for some reason, we have the same, suitcase or whatever it is.
It's the Parent Trap, but like with Samsonite.
And now we are stuck on this desert island with only one movie each to watch, and that is the other person's movie.
Okay.
So I wanted to I know that's an elaborate setup.
No, but the setup is very important, and I think we'll both be talking about each other's films, but I think even before that, we should talk about why that would be our movie.
Why would that be our movie?
But even before that,
before that,
listen,
the preamble to the prologue,
the preamble. This idea is wonderful. I'm glad you set it up. But something else that I absolutely do love is hearing from our wonderful, wonderful listeners.
Yes. And our wonderful listeners could email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. And sometimes we get very, very smart people emailing us in.
Most times, in fact. It's normally to tell us we did something wrong.
And in this case, it was someone telling me that I had done something wrong.
Oh, this is my favorite kind of email.
This email is actually from someone I know, but who I haven't spoken to in a little while. They've moved to another country. And their prefix on their name is a doctor. And they are a biochemist. And on our Annihilation episode, I happened to talk about a few things that related to biochemistry.
Okay.
Or biology in general.
Sure.
And Dr. De Silva, who is a biochemist at the University of Edinburgh.
Okay. Edinburgh?
Edinburgh. He's in Edinburgh. Wrote and said, as per your conversation about HeLa cells, they are a cervical cancer cell named after Henrietta Lacks, H-E-L-A, from whom the cells were isolated. So there is no such thing as trying to isolate HeLa cells before Henrietta. Best wishes, Raphael. Now,
okay. So he proved you wrong.
Actually, technically, I emailed him back, and I was like, that's not what I said, Dr. De Silva.
You went back and listened to yourself, didn't you?
I did go back, and I was like, wait, I'm pretty sure that's not what I said. So when we're talking about Annihilation, I think a really interesting thing that happens in the movie Annihilation is there's a scene where Natalie Portman's character is reading a book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's a really amazing book. There's a great Radiolab episode about it. It was made into an HBO movie starring Oprah Winfrey, which is not very good. No. But it's a really fascinating story about the where the HeLa cell came from, as Dr. De Silva mentioned, and I talked about it as an interesting analogy to what was happening in the film because it's an immortal cell. I think maybe where Dr. De Silva got confused was I said Henrietta Lacks was the patient zero for the HeLa cell, and I think he took that to mean that we were looking for the HeLa cell before that. What I meant was that was where the HeLa cell came from.
I just choose not to argue with doctors.
No, I wouldn't, but I live with one, and
oh well, yeah, okay. I wouldn't argue with Shivali either.
No, you shouldn't. It goes horribly every time. Most of the time, she'll traipse out her degree in front of me and just be like, look, PhD.
Does that come in? If I had one, I'd make sure I had it like in wallet size so I could like flip it open like a badge.
Oh, she's always wanted to do that on a plane.
Oh man,
is there a doctor in the house? I'm a doctor.
But then she's gonna have to like do an emergency
tracheotomy,
like collapsed lung thing. Yeah. And then she'd be like, oh, I didn't want to do that.
Who else has been getting in touch with us, Matt?
Well, this isn't one person per se, but it is a larger than normal group of people. I did a random thing, Shahir. I don't know if you saw it on the Instagrams or if even our listeners under Skeletor there before PREZ, my personal Instagram, because I haven't started a podcast one yet. I posted a picture because we are doing upcoming specials in the road to Infinity War.
Let's put an asterisk on the "we" there.
Well, that is true. Well, okay, so me and the wonderful and talented comedian of Girl Code fame, Shalia Evans, and I are doing a 3-part retrospective coming up. They're going to be bonus episodes, so if you don't like Marvel stuff, that's cool. Although, why are you here? Just kidding. There'll be sort of bonus episodes between regular reviews, but we're going to do one on Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. So I am now in the thick of rewatching every Marvel film, which, by the way, AMC is doing another marathon, and it's like 34 hours, and I think that's silly.
Could you imagine the smell in that place?
No. I mean,
have you been to a 24-hour movie marathon or anything like that?
No. I think the longest I've done, I think I did the one up to Avengers. So that's a lot, but that's like 12 hours-ish.
Oh, God, that's horrible.
Anyway, but so I was like, oh, I own all these on Blu-ray, and then I like put them all on the floor, and they looked really nice, in the phases and the rows. But then the one, obviously, because Black Panther is still in theaters, that space was empty. Right. So my cat Zoe is a black cat. So I was like, oh, perfect. And I kept trying to get Zoe to sit in the spot, and she wouldn't sit in the spot. But I ended up snapping a really cute picture, and I put it up on Reddit.
Okay.
It kind of
viral
blew up on Reddit. It had, and I don't post on Reddit, so listeners, if you do, and this isn't that impressive, I'm sorry. But you even texted me in the morning. You're like, "What up, front page of Reddit?"
I
We're
just in my usual wake up
for like 45 minutes, I think. Nothing huge, and we got
it was like Trump's announcements and you.
Well, no, it was Stephen Hawking, R.I.P. Stephen Hawking, and then my cat, and I was like, "What the hell?" But we got a ton of upvotes, so like, and then I've been literally just been chatting with people in R Marvel for the entire week. The community there is great, and I've really enjoyed like chatting with everybody there. So thank you for indulging me and sort of having a fun discussion. I've been instructing people on the proper order because I forget sometimes that this isn't everyone's lifeblood like it is mine.
Yeah, no.
So that's been super fun. So thank you, R Marvel and Reddit, because y'all have been very friendly to me and my own personal little black cat. So thank you.
Just a side note, if you can, you should watch A Brief History of Time right now.
Yeah,
and Errol Morris's documentary about Stephen Hawking.
Oh man, there was another Reddit compilation of all the great appearances that Stephen Hawking has done in media. Being the Star Trek: The Next Generation one is my favorite, when they have the hologram Data's playing poker with all the greatest minds, and he is one of them.
I just remember him on The Simpsons.
Yeah, he's on
Futurama a couple times.
Yeah.
Oh well, R.I.P. Stephen Hawking. But welcome to Black Panther, aka Zoe.
Yeah, that's right. And if you'd like to email us about things that Shahir did wrong or Marvel nonsense or literally anything that has to do with film or what you're thinking, please email us onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or get in touch with us on Twitter @onlymoviepod. Also, please leave some iTunes reviews. We've been getting a couple here and there, and we'd love more of them. Look, I want 5 stars, right? I want them. I want them.
Every single one.
But to be fair, I'd rather a 4-star review than no review at all. And if you have some criticism or some critique that you'd like us to hit, please let us know that as well.
Okay.
I'm trying to grow as a person, and I'm trying to grow as a podcast.
Yeah. It's weird.
But no, and I think that's
like
why
a Skynet kind of thing.
I know. Well, we do special episodes like this one every once in a while, which I really do enjoy. Just sort of things that are a little bit off the beaten path. Because I mean, Shahir, let's be honest, real quick. Let's just be honest. If we weren't going to do our Desert Island films this week, what would we have been doing?
Yeah, there's a few things out this week that I kind of wanted to check out.
What are yours?
My Desert Island movies?
No, what movies?
I really want to see the Death of Stalin. I really Armando Iannucci film. His film and his TV show In the Thick of It and In the Loop are amazing, and Veep is amazing. So I'm kind of a big. I do want to check that out.
Yep, that looks good. On my list of things that we could have been doing, we could have reviewed Tomb Raider, but there's a chance we might do that in the future.
Yeah.
With special guests that has requested to be on the episode, so we might do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could just watch a supercut of YouTube of the 2013 video game because it seems like it's the exact same thing. Oh,
sick burn, bruh.
There was also I do want to see Love, Simon. Which is all
really
about
good.
sort of like love in the internet, which I think is a interesting thing. And then there's obviously Josie, starring Sansa Stark, which looks like a little bit of a train wreck.
I feel like I saw some images from this.
She's always by a pool.
Right, it's not playing. It's not really coming up in my brain, but I know I've seen some images from this.
So my point is there are a couple films.
It's a pretty quiet period, isn't it?
It's a little bit slow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit slow. So I'm glad you came up with this.
And it just happened to coincide with 150. So Desert Island movies, and I think I'm gonna. So obviously I had my preamble, our little story of how we ended up on the Lost Island. But what a Desert Island movie is obviously a movie that if you had one movie to watch. Only one movie to watch, this would be the one. And you know, this is the only one you could watch from now on in. And I think Guillermo del Toro, recent Best Director nominee, winner, said he kind of had a slightly different definition. He wasn't talking about Desert Island movies, but he was talking about the film Zodiac, which would have been a very high potential for me. Was
no room in the suitcase?
No room in the suitcase. You can only pick one. Was that he described Zodiac as a one sock movie, and what he meant by that was that it's late at night, you're about to go out or something like that, and you turn on the TV and you sit down, you're about to put your sock on, Zodiac's playing, you end up with one sock in your hand, you watch the whole film like right to the end. He described it as that kind of movie. And I think for a Desert Island movie, that it should have somewhat of that similar quality where it's a movie, anytime it's on, it's one of those ones where you're just gonna There's nothing you can do about it.
This is my life now.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch this. So that was kind of the thinking behind it. But there's obviously a few parameters to this, because I know you and I were texting back and forth a little bit about like which movie should we do, and you said I think the movie you really wanted to do is one that we've actually reviewed on the podcast.
Some of them, depending. Also, there was other ones that I've like, oh, well, maybe I'd like to do a whole episode on this at some point. But I do feel, and we'll reveal our reasons later, but I do feel like the film that I've chosen is the perfect desert island movie.
What were your backups? What were like before we get to that film? What was some of the ones that you kind of were thinking
Terminator 2, which we've discussed. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I was expecting that one.
Which I think I'd like to do a full show on at some point. Once I have something, I'm developing a little thing about it, and because that movie I feel like in the nerdy sort of community has been pulled apart and has been discussed at great length. And until I have something actually officially like more to say about it than everyone else has, I don't think it's worthwhile yet, but I'm getting there.
Okay. You're growing.
Yeah. Also, Mad Max was kind of up there a little bit.
The Road Warrior or Fury Road?
Fury Road.
Okay. But we've done that.
But we've done that one.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one that I had? Youth, which we also had done.
Which we've also done. Yeah.
So I had a few.
None of the Marvel movies where you're like Disney.
Iron Man 1 or of the first Avengers.
Okay.
Because those probably Iron Man 1. Now that I've been rewatching, I don't want to get too much into it because I will be soon. But that movie is surprisingly 10 years later still very strong. But no, I think I made the right call.
Okay.
And what about you? What were your runners-up?
My runners-up, these are movies.
Because we can't fit more than one Blu-ray in a suitcase, or we can't put them on a drive.
Nope.
Or
we
a memory
live
card.
in like some alternate universe where iPods never came out.
Nope.
Heat was one of them, Michael Mann's film. There were a couple of Michael Mann movies on here for some reason. Heat and The Insider are two movies that I kind of love.
Sure.
Zodiac was another one.
Yep.
Doctor Strangelove was a definite choice of mine.
I thought you were going a different direction.
Oh, what did you think?
Because you're like Doctor Strange. I'm like love, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's good too.
Oh no, not Doctor Strange. Yeah, Doctor Strange, the movie, the only Marvel movie which I wasn't there for, happens to be my favorite movie of all time.
Shout out to John Gabris.
Out of Sight, the Steven Soderbergh film was another choice, and then I was like, then I started doing this thing which I was thinking about you, and I was like, what movies would I want Matt to watch? And I was like,
that's a little bit outside of the box.
That's outside of the box.
Your very elaborate sand-covered box.
Yeah, exactly. But there were a couple of movies I thought you would enjoy. There's two Korean films. One called Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho, which we did Snowpiercer.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And another one called Oasis, which I don't think you would like, but I think it's an amazing film.
It would be good for me? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think it would be. I think.
Okay.
I think anyone who sits down to watch this movie walks away going, holy shit, I can't believe that got made.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd like it, though.
That's all right.
You know what I mean? Michael Haneke's The Piano Teacher was the other one.
Okay.
But eventually I landed on one film that I think like you, when I sat down to think about it, it just made sense. It was like, this is actually the one I would probably pack with me wherever I go.
That makes sense. So whose suitcase? What side of the island? Either in the hatch or with the others? Where do we want to begin this journey?
Should we just like open them at the same time?
No. Well, I mean, we could.
That would just be awkward on an audio podcast.
Yeah, I don't think that works.
Okay. Why don't you tell me? Well, I'll tell you what yours was. You tell me what mine was, and then we'll start a review.
Okay. So you go first about mine.
Okay. The movie Matthew Kroll chose was directed by Gary Goddard. No relation to Drew Goddard.
Nope.
No relation to Drew Goddard. Masters of the Universe, the cinematic film adaptation of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
That is right.
Say no more.
Yeah.
Matt, what film did I pick for you?
I opened up Shahir's luggage, much more stylish than mine, I will say.
I was traveling in cattle class.
Look, I don't know why they upped my ticket. It doesn't make any sense. But I opened that thing up, and underneath all of the essays on cinema in general, and a lot of papers that just read, I taught film school.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like over and over again, like you got in trouble at a chalkboard. I found the Criterion Collection Blu-ray disc of the one and only, I would say, documentary about fraud and fakery.
Mm-hmm.
F for fake. Orson Welles.
Yeah. What did you think? No, okay. I mean, okay. These are you know what's hilarious about these is that I think someone on Twitter was calling out how like every review we do isn't actually about the movie. It's about our personalities as individuals and how we come to the movie, which I think is very accurate. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And these picks couldn't be more accurate in that description.
If there's one thing we're good at is staying on brand.
Yeah, we're very much on brand.
Look, I mean,
I'll jump in with the Masters of the Universe.
Okay.
Because for me, Masters of the Universe is an interesting one because I think the case with had you seen If for Fake before?
I had not.
Had you heard of it before?
Yes.
You'd heard of it before?
Yes.
So the thing with Masters of the Universe is not only had I heard of it before, I have seen this movie so many times.
It shocked me when I found out.
As a little kid, I was obsessed with He-Man, as most little kids were. I grew up around that period, 1982 to 1987, which was the big He-Man years. And Masters of the Universe came out, what was it, 1987, prime time for Shahir watching movies. And of course, it was a live action adaptation of this toy that I absolutely loved and had. And it was one of those things where, again, this would have been while I was in Fiji. So the other thing in Fiji is we didn't have TV. So we only had VHS copies, which meant we could rewatch things infinitely. You would rent a VHS copy of a movie and you would hold it for a week or two and you could just watch it as many times as you want. So I did a lot of rewatching. And eventually I think I owned my own copy of Masters of the Universe. And it was one of those things that I would, whenever like my parents went to dinner parties or anything like that and they had to bring, the kids would come along, it was the film we would take to like entertain the kids, while they were off having the dinner party.
Yeah.
And so I've seen this movie a bunch.
Yeah.
I even watched it recently because I think it popped up on Hulu or Netflix. And I kind of just popped it up as a nostalgia factor. And I was like, oh, cool. I want to just see where this was. And so here's my initial thoughts about it. There's no way I'm going to defend this as a good movie. I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is I do like this movie a lot on a personal level. Me personally enjoys watching this movie.
Then let's pause there right there. Then why isn't it good? I'm not talking about like, individual craftsmanship and quality of filmmaking and like the most artful telling of a story of a bunch of hunks of plastic that we used to smash together on playgrounds. I'm talking about if you enjoy the film, why is it not a good movie in your eyes?
Do you think The Room is a good movie?
I do.
You think The Room is a good movie?
And look, I would, because I think the difference, the term that I use, I don't mind calling The Room a good movie because The Room gives me an experience I don't get elsewhere that I overall enjoy.
Right.
If a film can do that, it's a good movie. Now, you could argue that it is not intentionally good. Right. I would agree with that 100%.
But like, would you say to anyone, "Oh, this is a good movie"? Like, because I think when you're saying The Room is a good movie, it's like, "Oh, I enjoy this film and it's a pleasure to watch." But
I get what you're saying.
But you can't like say to someone like blind recommending down the street, "Oh, this is a good movie."
No, because you're setting them up to fail in that point. But I think The Room and anything you're enjoying ironically or something that is being enjoyed in a way that it was not meant to be, obviously, that's a different sort of recommendation in general. Let's go with something other than The Room.
Well, but the point there, I think, with The Room and with Master of the Universe is that I wouldn't call it good, but you would, because I think it's a reflection of what you personally enjoy as taste.
But now, even beyond that, Master of the Universe, the film, is a good, and I'll say this straight up, is a good movie because structurally and from a film craft perspective, they did everything good. They did everything okay. Nothing's going to blow you away, but it is a competent film with decent cinematography, great acting in one spot, and then a bunch of mediocre acting in another spot.
You know what I would actually compare it to is The Godfather Part 3, which I would say is not a good movie, but has some great moments in it.
Yeah, but
and
again,
it makes sense. And it's structurally sound.
I think you and I get hung up on terminology a lot. Spoiler alert. But I think I just have a hard time because like I would never call it a great movie. Like for instance, when you mentioned like let's put it this way. I think it's great because of my nostalgia and because of things that I'll talk about later on in this episode. But I do honestly feel like if you strip away my love of a thing, I think it is and by good, I mean, like, even 50 to 60 out of 100. I mean, like that sort of thing. It's a good. It doesn't do anything egregiously wrong to be like, that's a bad movie.
Right.
It's a good movie. It's a solid enough.
I think if we're using that, if we're going to get hung up on terminology there, I would say,
which we never do.
I would say it's an okay movie. Like, to me, good is a slightly different bar than what this movie is.
I will concede to that sort of point or that sort of thinking.
You're right. It's not egregiously bad, although Dolph Lundgren his
acting is the worst part of the film.
Is pretty bad, and what if he is the main character of the movie? This movie
he's not the main character.
Has some problems.
There's a reason it's called Master of the Universe and not called He-Man. There's a reason.
Okay. It's funny though. You've jumped in to defend this film right away.
Yeah, well,
because
I just didn't like the terminology. I think it's as a good movie, or in your words, in your thing, it is an okay movie.
It's an okay movie, and I enjoy it because it reminds me of repeated viewings that I would have of it. And I gain a lot of pleasure from just rewatching scenes that I have seen many a time before. Mm-hmm. And I think, what it does, and the other thing I was thinking about when I watched it, I was like, oh, Matt, I suddenly get why Matt loves Thor. Because Master of the Universe is the prototype for the first Thor movie. It
really? Honestly, it's the prototype for the second one. Oh, no.
It's the prototype for the first one.
It's the first one, you're right. Fish out of water.
Fish out of water. Like, let's not do it on Asgard. Let's put them on Earth.
Yep. It's cheaper that way.
It's a lot cheaper that way. Let's have someone on Asgard trying to get it back, all that, yada, yada, yada. It's exactly that movie. And in fact, I've been reading a book this week called The Big Picture, which is about the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And they talk a lot about how the cost savings in Thor were exactly the same rationale for Master of the Universe, where it was literally like, we can't afford to do Asgard. Let's just do a little bit of Asgard at the beginning, maybe a little bit at the end, but let's get them on Earth into a location that we can actually afford.
Like a town they build 3 square blocks of to blow up.
Yeah, the book is called The Big Picture: The Fight for the Future of Movies by Ben Fritz. Very good book. Really all based on the Sony hacks, by the way.
Hacks on hacks.
So coming back to He-Man, Dolph Lundgren certainly looks the part. But the other thing about rewatching this is it reminds me that like He-Man is a house of cards. It is literally like a hodgepodge of mythology from all sorts of different things kind of like thrown together. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I remember I think the thing was that I owned the toy, and the toy was really unique in that it was like bulky and muscular, and it like had this sort of like...
They were taller than most action figures at the time.
And they had this sort of like detail to the musculature, which was like really intricate, and it felt, there was something very tactile about it that was really different to like owning a G.I. Joe or a Mask or something like that.
The Netflix series, The Toys That Made Us,
I
is
watched
really
that.
Great. I haven't watched the He-Man one. That's the one I'm up next, but I've watched G.I. Joe and Barbie. And that whole time is so interesting about literally how a lot of our memories and a lot of our things that we've enjoyed when we were children in that time period were literally just consumerism. Like
entirely.
naked
Everything.
consumerism. And we're the first generation to experience that. Like from a that, like things that define us, like no generation before us is looking at is dealing with the nostalgia bomb like we are, because they were actively pushed to us. You didn't just find your thing you were into when we were kids. It was marketed to us.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we are the first generation to experience the sort of bulk consumerist marketing. There's a really good documentary called The Corporation, which has this interesting side note about the nag factor that they talk about, where like kids are encouraged to nag their parents
to get the things because they can't buy them.
Yeah. And the toy makers really like actively encourage that behavior. And the interesting thing is I have watched that episode of The Toys That Made Us.
Don't spoil it.
Well, the thing that they talk about was that Mattel was really reeling from the fact that they didn't get Star Wars.
Yes.
Like Star Wars, like they were offered Star Wars and Kenner Toys took it instead in a ridiculous deal that was like so advantageous to George Lucas. But unlike anything else that came out.
The first one was advantageous to
Kenner. That's
Kenner.
Right. Yeah,
and then when the prequels came out, they got boned.
Yeah, because the thing was that up until that point, no science fiction property like that had done as amazingly as that film had done. So Mattel was like, we need something, and so they kind of were like, well, rather than like try to license something, and I think they were trying to license Battlestar Galactica, they were like trying to do Star Trek. They were like, why don't we just make our own? Which is exactly, by the way, the impetus of the Marvel of Marvel Studios. They were like, instead of like trying to license our properties out to other people, why don't we just make our own?
It's the impetus for Transformers. They were GoBots. They decided to go from like it's how a lot of the stuff was made.
And it's kind of amazing because then what you see is when you look at it under that paradigm, it's like, oh, they were reeling from Star Wars, so they were like, okay, let's do something that was kind of Star Wars-esque. And then at the same time, they were like, oh, our market research tells us that young boys are very obsessed with power. They even say the word a lot. You know, the power.
I have the power.
I want the power. And they're kind of at at the age of 5 or 6, they're kind of fighting for independence. So that sense of like gaining power is what they want. And then on top of that, they found like a bunch of Conan the Barbarian artwork, and they're like, this is the aesthetic that we want to work in this Star Wars universe about this one character that has this power. And it's just this like hodgepodge of like ideas kind of like jammed together. And if you watch the TV show, it's like sometimes it works, sometimes it's just like, what?
The Diamond Ray of Disappearance episode works great. Anytime where they go to, I won't say anytime, but like all the Hordak shit, not so much.
It's such a strange hodgepodge. So what I enjoyed about revisiting this film was kind of seeing the younger version of myself take delight in the things that were just kind of presented to me and enjoying them for what it was. It was like this idea of this big, bulky man, like with muscles and a sword and laser guns. That's pretty cool. I liked Cringer the cat, though he's not in the movie.
Not in the movie.
I liked Orko, though he's not in the movie.
Gwildor.
I liked Eternia and the mythology around Grayskull. That's kind of in the movie. That's like
the only place in Eternia that's in the movie, other than like the Badlands.
Like Sorcerer is kind of in the movie.
Sorceress?
Yeah, Sorceress is in the movie. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I will defend is Frank Langella, who I will say objectively gives a masterclass in performance here, because he takes what is an iconic kind of like slightly schlocky laugh from a cartoon, the classic Skeletor kind of laugh, that sort of high pitched thing, and he turns it into something that is extraordinarily Shakespearean, something with a real sense of pathos, something where he does mask performance so well in this film. It's kind of that this is the one thing in this film I will say not only goes beyond the bar of good, it is excellent on a level that is almost unparalleled. And I think what Frank Langella does here is he takes it seriously. He takes the mythology seriously. He takes the performance of what the character motivation seriously, and he just gives it his all. And unfortunately, the only problem there is that when he's up against Dolph Lundgren, it's a case of like the comparison I made there was The Godfather Part 3, where it was like Sofia Coppola up against Al Pacino. So that's the kind of this is sort of mixed nostalgia thing. I enjoy it because it like reminds me of my nostalgia, and it reminds me of me as a kid. And then rewatching it like really gave me a kick to see Frank Langella kind of deliver this incredible performance. It is up there with the best things he's done in my opinion. But would I watch this over and over and over and over and over again? I'm not exactly sure about that, but Matt, tell me why you would.
I mean, you're dead on. You're dead on about good old Frank. There's no welcome back, Frank. Not that you've gone anywhere. Frank Langella is a fantastic actor. Look, the reason this film is what I would say my desert island film is because, and I do think it goes beyond nostalgia, but nostalgia definitely plays a part in it. I think for a film. Well, let's rewind. I have a jokey answer that's partway true, and then I have a real answer that's partially a joke.
Okay.
My jokey answer that is partially true is if we're crash landed on an island and I have to deal with the others, and I'm having to deal with all the stresses about surviving and trying to get these people to trust me, and I'm probably going to be put in a labor camp, and then I have to make this toxic gas that's eventually going to destroy the thing or whatever. Even if it's a more realistic island, I'm going to have to deal with food. I'm going to have to try to get rescued. It's going to be hard. I'm going to be working out like 12 to 18-hour days, and I'm only going to have like a small moment of respite to sort of collect myself and collect my thoughts. I need something that is both at the same time comforting, smart where it needs to be, mindless where it needs to be, and maybe something that can teach me a thing or two about exile. So this movie, and even sort of beyond that, and in a more serious tone, this is a film that every time I watch it, and I've probably watched it almost 50 times in my life, if not more at this point. Just again, same thing that you had said, my grandfather back in the day who had HBO, he was the only family member that had it, taped it off it, and we just burnt that VHS to the core, just watching it over and over again. And every time I've watched it that I can remember, I've noticed something new.
Okay.
And that to me speaks to, and again, there are problems with this movie, 100%. Don't let my egregious love or even choice to put it in this matter be the end all be all of what I think is quality, but there is enough love shown in a lot of the costume design, set design, the art direction in general in this film. You can see where they cut corners, but you can also see where they put their money, which is really nice. I just noticed different things. I've picked up on so much stuff, especially because Frank Langella is the glue. He's the main character. Skeletor is the main character of this thing. He has some of the best monologues. I think I've memorized them all. It's funny. He takes a cookie cutter character like Skeletor and turns it, like you sort of said, into something better. But to the point, like, I've noticed how he now has actual emotional tics.
Yeah.
He repeats himself when he doubts himself, and then he corrects himself when he wants to sort of bolster him up. This is a person or a being that is actually tormented. Like, he's playing a very multi-tiered character. And there's something so interesting to have that be in the midst of schlock.
Right.
And I really love that. I think the script is very, very tight and funny. And I think that it overall checks all the boxes for me. Like, again, Terminator 2 would have been a nice choice.
Yeah.
But
yeah, would you have picked, like, if
I don't think I would.
Terminator 2?
Terminator 2 jumped in my head.
Yeah.
But I don't like it. It checks a lot of the boxes, but also it's also very serious. Especially I think the more you watch it, the more serious that film gets. And again, I do have to, if I'm going with The Exercise, this isn't like locked away in a comfortable room for to watch one movie for the rest of your life or just whatever. This is survival. I think I need something like this.
You could frame it in any way you wanted.
No, we framed it like this.
Right.
So I chose this movie.
Right. You chose this.
So I don't know. If you haven't seen it, I would really be interested. Actually, oh my God, listeners, I need a listener who has never watched Masters of the Universe 1987, who generally enjoys sci-fi.
Right.
I don't want someone who doesn't like a sci-fi thing to watch it because I know what you'll think.
Yeah.
But I'd really be interested to have a listener watch the film and send us a small short review that we can sort of read at a later episode, because I'm just curious, for people that don't have you and I's sort of history with the film, Shahir, how it would play in 2018. Like, if it could still be fun. And I think it could.
I think if you jump in with like, oh, this was Thor before Thor was Thor. This was like Thor for a different generation.
Sure.
I think that would like make it make sense. But like, for example, my wife watched it with me and she was like, just none of this landed for her.
She's not a huge sci-fi nut, is she?
Not a huge sci-fi nut, but it also like it kind of speaks to as well, I think, the nostalgia place that you and I are coming from, which was like young boys that are into He-Man. And if you're not, even having Tila or She-Ra or all that stuff if you're not into that, it's like it's sort of a hodgepodge of stuff.
I want someone who really enjoyed Star Trek The Next Generation, who's never seen Masters of the Universe, to watch Masters of the Universe.
You know what I also really did like? I remember this as a kid, and I hadn't thought about it for a long time, but the mythology around the key.
The cosmic key.
The cosmic key, and like the way it played music. I remember that being much more incredible. But then you like in the movie, you see Gwildo like jamming at it with like his like big chubby fingers. And it's like, I just remember it being like this sort of mystical thing. What sort of a tale from back then was that we would have like woods near us and I would run into them, when we were playing, and I would look for things like that and be like, oh, when is this thing going to? So it really did spark the imagination that way.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was stuck on a desert island, that might be a good thing because it would like send me into hunter-gatherer mode.
There's lots of good things. So that's why I chose it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, look, we could go into this. I could quote you the entire script. That's not the point. But
you love this film.
I love this film, and now, since everything comes to he who waits, and Shahir has waited so very long for this moment.
F for fake.
F for fake. I open up the luggage. I get off my shift at the quarry or whatever Ben is making me dig to appease Jacob on the friggin' Others Island. Wow, lots of Lost references in my head today.
Do you think you guys get together and watch it together, or
I would make them eventually, unless they take it from me.
Gotcha.
F for fake. This is a 1973 documentary.
I'm gonna stay silent because I want you to I want to see what because I didn't give you any information about it.
No, and I'd heard about it, and I heard it was about, I mean, actually, you know, I quoted it a little bit before. A documentary about fraud and fakery is literally the only thing on IMDb to actually sort of, when we read the IMDb synopsis, I was like, I guess that's true. So this is Orson Welles, and again, I kind of do want you to jump in from time to time because I think one reason I thought you chose this film as your desert island movie is because one viewing is not enough. So like I feel like I have that one viewing mindset of it, and I got some questions.
Right. Okay.
But it's basically did this film come about? And this is the main question that'll sort of did it come about he was making one film and then he decided that he found out some information, then sort of twisted it into this film? Is there a mythology behind it in that way?
There is a mythology behind this movie that's pretty rich and deep and crazy. I guess the thing. So I did a thing, which is as soon as I figured out that this was the movie I was going to play, I sat and watched it. Mm-hmm. And I think I watched it at that moment from like a first person of like, what is the impression of this movie the first time? Like, and I was kind of like, does this, because I've watched this movie like a good on 30 or 40 times.
Sure.
And I was like, does this movie actually make sense if you're just watching it for the first time?
Oh, yes, it does. There are scenes in it that took me out of it. Specifically, honestly, the very beginning, I was like, oh no. There's a scene where Orson Welles is like acting this sort of magic scene with like playing with the kid and like making things disappear and sleight of hand and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, this definitely isn't real. But like he's starting to narrate this like it's a documentary or something. And then once it actually started moving, you basically find out that he's not following. He's just sort of orating a story about an art faker by the name of Elmir
Dawoodi.
Yeah, and then the person who was his biographer, Clifford Irving. Clifford Irving, and somewhere on the side there's a woman named Oja. Mm-hmm. Which you're like, okay, she's in there in the beginning, and then she kind of comes back at the end for a very specific purpose. Like at first I thought it was going to be Orson Welles kind of debunking how people fake stuff. Okay. That's how I thought it was going to go, because in the beginning of this film, there is the sort of like Oja, this beautiful woman, is like just walking down the street in like a short skirt, and like it's just he's filming men leering at her, mm-hmm. and I was like, oh, like he's going to talk about like how perception like can change the way you look at things and how you don't notice stuff based on other things. So he just did a whole sleight of hand thing with the kid, but then you get into this more rich meat and potato stuff of this art faker who I think his story, even on its own, not nested in this Russian nesting doll of plot, is great, because he's an art forger that literally, like, he's made so many forgeries, like they're definitely hanging in museums, and he has this line. He's like, look, if my painting's in the Louvre, it's real.
Right.
And like that's a baller sort of outlook on life. And then you have his biographer, who, I guess, did he get the job because he said he was the biographer of Howard Hughes? Or I don't get the.
Yeah, do you want me to jump?
Yeah, because the timeline's a little bit rough for me about what I want to get through what it actually happens, and then the questions I can sort of touch on.
Because I think it is intentionally obfuscated. Like
it's meant to be.
It kind of jumps all over the place. And I think you have these scenes of Orson Welles sitting in an edit room going, no, we'll come back to that. Oh, let me jump back over here. And he's kind of like editing it in real time.
Yes.
But just to answer your question, Clifford Irving was Elmire Doury's biographer. He wrote articles about him. He'd written a book about him. And then later in life, Clifford Irving was famously, he was actually arrested for this. He wrote a biography of Howard Hughes that Howard Hughes purported to have paid for. But the thing is, no one had seen Howard Hughes for maybe 10, 15 years. Howard Hughes was played famously by Leonardo DiCaprio in The Aviator. Yep. And Howard Hughes kind of eventually debunked this. And it became this question of like, well, did Clifford Irving learn how to do fakery because he spent so much time with one of the world's greatest art forgers?
Yeah, probably.
And so that's kind of the timeline of it.
So you pick up a lot of different stuff. In the beginning of this movie, Orson Welles says to you, he's like, for the next hour, everything I'm going to tell you is absolutely true. And you've just seen this whole thing about like sleight of hand and fakery and making people pay attention to one thing when maybe they should be paying attention to another. You go down this whole thing, and I do always appreciate Orson Welles' sort of like one-track mind when it comes to Howard Hughes. Like when Howard Hughes entered this picture, I was like, like of course this is around this. But it goes down this sort of rabbit. It's like rabbit hole upon rabbit hole upon rabbit hole. And then it talks about what actually a fake thing is versus real, which is kind of like the quote that I mentioned about if it's in the Louvre or whatever, it's real. Look, I mean, and that's something where the film really started to grab me, because I co-sign 100% for the fake it until you make it mentality.
Right.
Everything in all aspects of my life, I feel like I've just faked things until I get there, and then because I credit myself as being a competent person, if I don't feel I'm up to the task, I get myself up to the task, but I normally have faked my way to get there.
Right.
And it because the entirety of our entire society is based on presentation and based on what people think of a thing. Mm-hmm. Money's only real because we give it value.
Right.
There's that whole aspect to this thing. So when someone can buck the system, like Elmire can do, and in a way, Clifford can do. That is always interesting to me, because they believe so hard in themselves that it doesn't matter that the rest of the world doesn't believe in them, because they end up doing it anyway. Like it's this weird sort of, so that aspect grabbed me. Mm-hmm. Now here is where I was hoping the film wouldn't go, but it did, and I think this is where I have a problem. Not a problem with it, but like this film is very clever. I think it's put together, like you said, sort of feels like Orson Welles in the edit room. He actually literally shows him editing a thing at one point. He talks about how editing is magic, because it is.
Yeah.
He does this thing, and I actually kind of felt it coming, like when he did that line of like, for the next hour, I'm like, and even I was like, well, I think this movie's longer than an hour. I'm like, right. Is he going to, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I like it because it's clever, but I didn't like that I figured it out right away. He starts this whole story about Picasso and Oja. Oh yeah. Thank you. About how Oya was, or her it was her would go to lived in the same town that Picasso did at some point, and then he would watch her out a window, and there's a really long scene, like it felt like 10 minutes of like stills of Picasso looking through Venetian blinds at Oya walking. And then basically he wanted to paint her, and she said he could if she was 22 paintings or something like that, if she got to keep them all, and he did it and whatever. So he had a whole period of them, and then she tried to sell them, and he got mad because it was supposed to be just for her, and because they basically like privatized a whole season for Picasso, and there's this whole "Call Me by Your Name" sort of moment of not the film itself, but like literally. It's Orson Welles and Oja's playing Picasso, and Orson Welles is that how it's like
Orson Welles is playing Oya's grandfather.
Playing Oya's grandfather, who has the... Anyway, it's a very convoluted thing to talk about how easily you can sort of how this sort of can happen, or how a person can be in charge of someone else's narrative, and then he pulls the rug out from under you, being like, by the way, an hour was 17 minutes ago or whatever, and that whole story was fake. Yeah. So it was to further the idea that you especially in a medium like film, or in any medium, if you do the right tricks, you get bought, you buy into whatever's happening. The problem I had was that was a trick that I didn't want to be correct on, but I had the thought being like, I hope this isn't what's going to happen.
Right.
So in that, and I think if I knew more of the backstory, it wouldn't have bothered me as much. That's sort of it's not the whole point of the film, because the film has many points, but if the idea is fakery only works as well as you can do it to fake a person, but then the fakery that they're doing to sort of prove that in one aspect is a fakery I caught on to, it didn't give me the gut punch that I wanted to have at the end. So like, while I think it is a great film, there's no question in my mind about that, and I really liked it. I look forward to watching it again, and I'd like to read a little bit more about it. It was so good, and it built me up to a spot, and then it did a thing that I had already figured out and hoped that it wouldn't do, so it didn't quite land the ending for me.
Right.
But I also wonder if that's a symptom of the times.
The movie is 1973.
No, I mean the symptom of watching this film now for the first time.
Right.
Because especially like the second I knew it was about forgers, and I knew it was Orson Welles, and he's a clever dude.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there's going to be a thing.
Right.
And then but like, I can only imagine like back in the day when you didn't have that even idea that was even a thing.
Yeah.
How mind blowing that would be.
Yeah.
So I totally see. I think I see why this is your desert island film, and I would cherish it, and I'd let Juliet watch it. I wouldn't let Ben watch it on the island.
Okay.
Maybe Lapidus. I'd let Lapidus watch it.
Lapidus was...
He was the pilot.
I don't think he'd be into it. I think Ben would be...
Desmond would be into it. Ben would want to. I don't want Ben to watch it. He'd get ideas.
Desmond would really be into this film. He would watch this over and over again. Jack would hate it.
Jack would hate it.
Yeah.
Sawyer would love it.
Maybe, yeah.
It's all about what Sawyer does.
It's a con man. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So why in your head would this be your film?
So it was actually really hard for me to think about that question, because I was thinking the thing about Guillermo del Toro's one sock thing really just stuck in my head, and it is this film that I just can't like let go of, and it to me there's this personal connection to it because it feels like it romanticizes everything I love in life.
Yeah,
and so when even just thinking about the film just kind of in a way gives me butterflies. And then like when I watch it and I hear like Orson Welles monologuing about the Chartres, the giant cathedral that has no authorship, I just think like that is like catnip to me. You know what I mean? It's like I could just watch that all day. And there's a thing about, the romanticism of who Orson Welles was, about the idea of him putting together this film. So to come back to your initial question, the backstory around this film. At the beginning of the movie, there was a guy who you kind of see a couple of times. He's wearing the Porky Pig t-shirt. That guy's Francois Reichenbach.
Yeah.
Francois Reichenbach was making a documentary about Elmire, and he's kind of like, he just had all this footage. He'd been hanging out with Elmire. He'd been hanging out with Clifford Irving for a little while, and he was friends with Orson Welles, and he said, hey, could you edit this film for me? And Orson Welles, you got to remember, at this point in his life, had pretty much just fallen off the map of Hollywood. He was like 200 pounds overweight. His last known role was Omnicron in Transformers a few years later than this. That was pretty much what he was doing. Unicron.
Please.
And he wasn't getting a lot of work. And the thing was, he was the thing that's romantic about the Orson Welles figure of late is, like at the start of his career, he was heralded as the boy genius. He was given basically the keys to the kingdom, make whatever you want. He turned in what is arguably called today still one of the greatest films made of all time. He's 24 years old at the time. ever since then, you know, when he says I've been failing, you know, I started at the top and been failing down my whole life, is actually true. The thing is, as an artist, he got bitter. And to me, the thing about this is I think this is a better film than Citizen Kane, because it is a film that it's scrapped together by like the seat of his pants. He has no money. He's trying to make at the same time as this. He's been working on a version of Don Quixote for like years that he can't get financing for.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
He's got like other films that he's been trying to make that just aren't going anywhere. And this is a guy that takes all of that frustration, that inability to get financing, the fact that he's still turning in great films. Like just before this, he did the film The Trial, the adaptation of the Franz Kafka film, which is amazing. It's just mind-blowing. And, you know, like Hollywood doesn't want to have a bar of him. You know, like he's making the most amazing films of all time. And he takes all of that frustration and he's like, okay, here. And as he starts making this film, the Clifford Irving story with Howard Hughes comes to the forefront. People are like, Clifford Irving, who is this guy? Why did he write this fake biography of Howard Hughes? And so Orson Welles takes this documentary about the world's greatest art forger, which happens to feature Clifford Irving.
Yeah.
And then he says, okay, the reason why Elmire has not reached the level of attainment is that he's not been validated by experts. He's not.
Oh, I did leave that out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he hasn't reached the sort of level of validation. And then he realizes that the thing that happened to Clifford Irving is that Clifford Irving wasn't validated. Clifford Irving was refuted immediately. His biography was immediately like torn apart because a voice of Howard Hughes appears on this like phone and says, no, that's not me. And they're like, who is, you know, and Orson Welles asked the question. It was like a voice appeared out of nowhere and suddenly Clifford Irving's career was gone. And then Orson Welles, then he takes those two stories and then he turns the whole film on its head and starts talking about his career and what he's done in his career and how he says like, I didn't know what I was doing when I started making movies. I said I was an actor, but I wasn't, but people believed me. So I just kept doing it. I made this incredible, radio play, War of the Worlds, and it just, you know, like, and other people replayed it and got arrested for what I did. Yeah. You know, if you remember the famous story, he played War of the Worlds as a real story on the radio and people believed it and ran for the hills. And then he turns it about like he comes to this final conclusion, which is what I think is the romanticism of this for me, is he is like, all art is fake. Everything is fake. Right. All it requires is validation. And he has been validated and invalidated in times. And I think that's why the story like of the Picasso thing is yes, it is meant to surprise you, but I think it's like, to me, it's like the ending of The Prestige, which is like, I knew it was the ending of The Prestige was coming when I saw it, and I didn't like it the first time, but then the more I watched it, I was like, it doesn't actually matter because that's what the film is about. Yeah. And the ending there is like, oh, he tells you the story, and if even for a sliver of a second you believe it, he immediately pulls the rug out from under it and says, no, that was a fake story. And if you believed it for just a second, that's all you need to know to understand how art works. And that's why I love this documentary, is that it's this, and the term that was coined around this documentary was that it wasn't a documentary, it was a video essay. And in fact, if you... Which is now very popular on the YouTubes. If you listen to one of the most famous video essayists, Tony Zhu, who did Every Frame a Painting, he points to this film as the reason he does what he does, or did what he did. And he talks about how the techniques that this film employed are really at the cutting edge of what video essays could have and should have been, and still are. Yeah. And I watch this film and just get, my mind is blown every time by not just the layering of story here, the Elmire, Clifford, and then Orson Welles himself, but also the technique at display here. Orson Welles just, he has a command of the cinematic language like no other person has, even when he has no money to do anything extraordinary. Yeah. And he's just like hodgepodging and like slamming this film together in the edit suite, showing cuts. This film had some of the shortest cuts in history up until this point. Yeah, it did. To the point where projectionists would stop the movie and like certain
thinking it's a mistake.
Thinking it's a mistake. And I was like, no, everything was intentional. So I like... And the thing is, you know, like I wrote my honors thesis about this film, or about a part of this film.
Oh, that's weird. I wrote my honors thesis about Masters of the Universe. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, and it was like, and you know, for that project, I had to watch this like God knows how many times.
Oh, I imagine.
But every time I watch this film, I just get excited about it. Now, I don't expect you to get excited about it. I don't expect anyone to get excited about it like I do. But if I was to, you know, pick a movie that kind of like fills my imagination,
sure,
and like, you know, fulfills me and kind of like snaps my brain into like weird places, this is the film.
You know what's very interesting? To me, maybe to no one else, but whatever. I'm talking to the microphone. I think the things that brought us to both of our films are the exact same thing. And I don't mean what the films are. It's the feelings that, like what you just described about like sort of like kicking your imagination into gear and like getting you to feel creative or whatnot, or even to the point of like, at first I was like, well, why did Shahir pick more of a documentary film as opposed to a narrative film? And, you know, even outside of the exercise of like the reasons I was like, oh, I need leisure time or whatever. But like, it is about the feeling that the thing gives you.
Yeah.
And the feeling, for instance, that Masters of the Universe gives me always gets me into. I used to make, when I was a little kid, and I don't know, did you ever make movies when you were like a little kid? Like, did you have like a crappy camera and make like stupid, like I used to make, videos of like I used to do like continuations of like Escape from New York. I'd make Escape from the Barn from my grandparents' farm when I was like 11.
Yeah.
And like I'd just make a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
This film, Master of the Universe, is the sort of stuff that even back then and now still makes me excited to create, which is weird because it's not crazy innovative. It's not like F for Fake, I feel like, is, especially at the time, was like insanely innovative, and it, all of the things that you've just described that you really love about the film, how he didn't, like, the budget wasn't there and he still managed to do it, and even though he was sort of failing in his career as one thing, he was becoming a master at something else. A master of his own universe, if you will. But like, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. The point is, I think the films that we chose are the things that make us want to create. And I think if we're stuck on a desert island, creating might be the only thing that's important.
I mean, yeah, you need to learn how to like, but then wouldn't Castaway be a better choice for both of us? You know, like
no, because that's just a man going insane.
Well, but he's also learning how to make fire.
Sure,
fire.
Yeah, and talking to a beach ball. No, but like,
one thing I was curious about with Master of the Universe as opposed to, say, like Escape from New York. Why Master of the Universe over that? Or why Master of the Universe over Star Wars? Or
Escape from New York is a film that I think it was the reason that I went to film school. Mm-hmm. But it is not something that I feel like is eternally watchable. Mm-hmm. It is a slow film. It has beautiful shots, but they go on way too long. I have problems with the technique of it, but back in the day was the thing that was like, no, I want to make this, and I still do. Like that's sort of a point of inspiration, but it is not. And I think I enjoy the nostalgia of seeing that film for the first time and being like, oh yes, technically I want to make movies because of this thing.
Right.
I started doing, but even before that, I started doing things and wanting to hunt down a camera or doing radio plays on like cassette tapes because Masters of the Universe existed and that I had seen it so much. Like if for instance, if Escape from New York is the reason why I went to film school, Masters of the Universe, honestly, and it could even go a little bit into the toys as well, but I just feel like the film is like the finish line.
Yeah.
Is the reason why I like telling stories.
Right.
And again, it's not a great story. It's a good story, but it's a good story that's grounded in what I consider, again, Frank Langella killed it. No one else really did acting-wise. Everyone else on the crew, I feel like, did an okay job. The director hasn't directed a thing really since. He's coming out with something soon.
Yeah, an Evita,
great
version of Evita.
I love Evita.
Like, yeah.
So I think it's just that it's the perfect mix for me of, again, nostalgia definitely plays into it, but it can't just be that, because I feel like then it would be Escape from New York, and it's just not.
Right. I think, you know, it's curious. If I was thinking about the film that made me want to make films, I know I definitely, the impetus to start creating was Transformers the movie.
Yeah.
Because
the cartoon.
The cartoon movie.
Not Michael Bay.
But it was like a crime of necessity that made me start creating it, which was that I couldn't dub the VHS. We didn't own two VHS players. We didn't know how to like connect two VHS players. So I got a tape recorder and I would like record the movie and then listen to it. And then I was kind of like creating it in my head, and I started drawing the film as I saw it in my head. And I think that was what started that process of creation. If a Fake, I think maybe crystallized a period in my life where I started realizing that film could be more than
just a story, like a story, like a narrative, or.
I think the thing was, If a Fake also reminds me of a thing I have about Watchmen and The Wire, which is that those are two films, not just that they're W films, but that there are two pieces of art that are intrinsically tied to the medium that they come from. So The Wire, to me, can't be anything other than a TV show, and because it tells a story through the medium of TV show, the reason that it works is because it's a TV show. And I think the same thing about Watchmen, the graphic novel. The reason why that's so successful is it does things with the form of the graphic novel that only you could do with a graphic novel. I don't think that works quite as well as a movie, although I think Zack Snyder's adaptation is actually a pretty good adaptation. I just don't think it translates very well, and I don't think it'll work as a novel, or maybe it'll work as a TV show. I don't know.
Hey, is it HBO or Showtime?
I think it's HBO because Damon Lindelof, our guy from Lost, who's at the helm.
Yep.
The thing for If a Fake was I just kind of realized that all the things that I thought were important when making a movie weren't important at all. And what the other thing that I love about If a Fake is I feel like If a Fake is a direct tap in line into Orson Welles' brain, and I feel like I'm getting. I'm seeing his thought process as he's thinking it.
Yeah, you're being a psychic vampire.
Yeah, and it's kind of and I don't think a lot of movies have ever made me feel that way, like that I am directly in touch with another person's brain, and I think that to me was profound. That to me was life changing, and that to me kind of validated the power of cinema, and that's why the movie meant a lot to me. And that's why I still, when I watch it, there's something about it that touches the very core of my being. You know what I mean? But I don't expect everyone to love. Like, my wife hates this movie. She's like, every time I put it on and I'm watching it, she's like, oh God, I don't want to hear Orson Welles fucking drone on ever again about some bullshit. I remember some friends came over and I was like, oh, let's watch this movie because there were movie people and they hated it.
That's the most depressing experience when you're excited. Even a YouTube video, I get sad. I'm like, this is the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Nope, no one.
No, and I was like, oh yeah, but I, it's that thing is I can watch this movie at the drop of a dime. If it's playing anywhere, I will watch it. If it's playing in a movie theater nearby, I will try to make time to go see it, even though I own it on Blu-ray. I've owned it on Blu-ray. I've owned it on DVD. I've had a pirated copy of it. I will buy it in any medium that it comes in.
Yeah. Well, I think that is very important because the desert island film, as we've described it, is for us. Just because our luggage got mixed up doesn't mean the exercise. The original thing was we could only watch this one thing.
Yeah.
And it's a personal experience, which is something that I think, look, art in general, we all have sort of personal experiences with. And, just because we're a film podcast, I'm not trying to discount every other sort of art form that people latch onto, music, painting, novels, etc. But these are things that for whatever reason have either in the past made us tick or continue to help us tick, and we're all unique snowflakes, and I mean that in a good way, not in the weird way that it's now connotated.
Tommy Lahren might use it against it. I think also the other thing is these two choices are so Matt and Shahir. These two choices
they're so Matt and Shahir.
They're so Matt and Shahir. The people who listen to this podcast will either fall into two camps, and there are two very tiny camps, and there will people who will love Masters of the Universe. I don't know if many of those people will have seen If a Fake, or there will be people who love If for Fake, and I don't know if many of those people will have seen Masters of the Universe, and they will both be on either side going, what the fuck is this person talking about? Like, what the fuck is this? And I think that's kind of where it works, you know what I mean? Like, because it is kind of about the fact that cinema is broad, filmmaking is a broad subject that goes that speaks to a lot of different things, and I think that this exercise kind of highlighted the Matt and Shahir paradigm of what we love. I'm curious though. I think I definitely have a soft spot for Master of the Universe. It's a tricky one because I've seen it so many times.
And I didn't know that. I mean, I think you told me it once, but it didn't register when I had picked it.
Yeah. I don't know if for Fake is kind of something you would watch again.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think I should watch it again.
But did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. And again, the only thing, there were two moments I didn't enjoy. One, very beginning. I thought the beginning was sloppy, but I almost think it was sloppy on purpose. I mean that by editing. The scene they did with the magic, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then the end twist, which I had figured out. But those aren't the points of the film.
Right.
Like, I feel like honestly, watching it again, those things wouldn't bother me because it's not like, I wouldn't feel like the film was trying to do anything to me. I would just be noticing more cool stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd 100% watch it again. And you live a block away, so that'll probably happen. Yeah.
So this has been the 150th episode.
The only podcast about F for Fake and Masters of the Universe. That statement I can guarantee.
That is a double feature that will never happen. And
I did it in one day.
You did a double feature of F for Fake and Masters of the Universe. Yeah. Nobody in the history of cinema is ever going to watch those two movies back to back.
I hope our listeners do. And I want you to tell us about it. Where can people tell us if they decide to go on this weird, lost... man in the cabin journey with us?
You can grow your beard out long and build a fire around a log table and email us in about that fire with maybe a video of it. I don't know. Sure. At onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. I think the thing I'm also interested in hearing from, and you can do this on Twitter at onlymoviepod, is what are your desert island movies? What are the movies that get you so excited, so breathlessly excited about filmmaking, about watching movies, about feeling emotionally connected to the filmmaker or the art or the story or whatever it is? What would be your desert island film if you were stuck in the front or the back of the plane?
You can get us, or the middle. Maybe you were in the middle of the plane. Maybe you were another passenger that we didn't even know was there. Yeah, let us know that. Also, you can let us know on Facebook. We go to Facebook still from time to time. We post stuff there. I just posted the new Infinity War trailer that Shahir should not watch.
Definitely did not watch.
And yeah, Shahir, when you are not falling from the sky trying to survive with only one piece of cinema that you accidentally gleaned from my luggage, where can folks find you?
Did I survive? Maybe I just dreamt the whole thing a la Lost.
I don't know. Or did they?
Did they? You can find me at my website, shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, when you are not ripping down the wood from your comfortable log cabin, might I add, which I don't have on my side of the island.
Sure, we have a hatch.
Yeah, I mean, where can people find you and your woodworking apparel that you sell?
You can find me at the Gazelle Station at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, this week, I guested on a very lovely podcast called Show Me the Meaning by the gentleman over at Wisecrack. They were kind enough to put me and Mr. James Portnow from Extra Credits on their Annihilation podcast, and that dropped this week, so please check that out if you already haven't. They were lovely. It's all about the philosophy behind film, and Annihilation was an interesting one because there is some, but I think there's actually more philosophy behind the making of Annihilation than there actually is, and I think it's in tandem. It's very strange.
I will check it out.
So yeah, check that out, and yeah, I guess we will see y'all, or you'll hear us next week. Right?
Everything I've said for the last 10 minutes has been a complete lie.
Oh no! Oh my God! Was you?
Yeah, I hate It for Fake. Was
it Heathers? Is your favorite movie Heathers?
My favorite movie is 21 Jump Street.
There we go. The remake.
No, just the original, the made-for-TV version with Johnny Depp.
Okay.
That's my jam. That's the movie I want to watch.
Wow.
Everything I've said is a lie, and It for Fake is a terrible movie.
Well, the cake is a lie.
The cake is a lie.